everyone, my name is Lucy and I'm one of the reading specialists at the Reading Connection. Have you ever been confused about what exactly is poetry? Or have you noticed that this type of writing is different than other types of writing and you can't figure out why? Well, today we're going to talk about poetry. We will see parts of a poem and we are going to learn everything that poems have and how it is different than other types of writing.
What is poetry? Poetry is a piece of writing written by an author called a poet. But what is the purpose of poetry? A poem is written using rhythm, rhyme, and other artistic language to show feelings and emotions. It's often short, but some poets write long poems too. Rhythm and rhyme are a part of many poems. Rhythm is the beat or sound pattern of a poem. Lots of poets use repetition and similar word sounds to create the beat or rhythm. Here's an example. A candy bar, a piece of cake, a lollipop, a chocolate shake. Many poems that have rhythm also have rhyme. Rhyme is having the same sound at the end of two or more words, like bike, hike, and rad, dad. Our poem from earlier has rhyme with the words cake and shake, and it makes me feel hungry. Another common element of poetry is alliteration. Alliteration is when the consonant sound is repeated at the beginning of words. Like Tracy the tiger made a terrifying sound. There are many types of poems that poets write. Some common poems are acrostic, couplet, haiku, limerick, narrative, free verse, humorous, and lyrical. A narrative poem tells a story. There are characters, problems, solutions, and a beginning, middle, and end. Free verse poetry doesn't follow a pattern. You won't see rhythm or rhyme in these poems. Humorous poems are funny, silly, and make us laugh. Lyrical poems express feelings and emotions. They're sometimes sing-songy with their rhythm. Let's look at an example. I have a little frog. His name is Tiny Tim. I put him in the bathtub to see if he could swim. He drank up all the water and gobbled up the soap. And when he tried to talk, he had a bubble in his throat. Let's look for some poetry elements in this humorous poem. Here we see rhyme, rhythm, alliteration, and a character. We know that a poem is written by a poet using rhythm, rhyme, and other artistic language to show feelings and emotions. Poems are usually short, but they can be long too. Listen for descriptions and decide how the poem makes you feel. It could be silly, or sad, or even glad.
So, did you think about who was writing? Did you think about who was telling this? Well, this is actually the first thing we're going to be talking about. So, the very first part that we have in a poem is called voice or the speaker. And when we talk about this, we're actually going to be looking for them in the poem that we just had. And we're going to highlight this in our pink highlighter. Okay. So we're just going to color code each of these parts from the poem. Okay, so all of what the voice or the speaker is referring to is the speaker. So we're going to highlight this one. The speaker in a poem, which could be the poet or a character the poet created. Okay. So the speaker in a poem, in a poem, which could be the poet or a character. Now we're going to go ahead and open it up and we're going to look for some clues to help us find the speaker in this poem. Okay, when we open this up, I seem to find a lot of clues with the word I. And we know that whenever we see the word I, it is talking about the character that is speaking, or it could be the author or even the poet. So I'm going to go ahead and find all of my I's. So that's the first one I see. Here's another one. Another one. So it continues all the way down. And if I go down to the bottom, it looks like down here I start to see them. I see more that are more specific. Okay. Okay, so this says, so this person is saying that they did all of these amazing things, right? He met a dragon, he was in a pirate's den, he wrestled a great white shark, and trailed a rabbit down the hole. Now, my question to you is, do these things sound like things he really did, or things he might have done in his imagination? See, he stowed aboard a submarine, opened magic doors, traveled in time in a time machine. Well, realistically, he didn't actually do all of these things. But if we go down here in the bottom, it actually gives us the answer, okay? It says, I did all this in books I read when I was 10 years old, okay? So, in that case, now we already know that the speaker who is doing this is really somebody who is remembering all the adventures he had by reading the books, okay? So I am going to write right off to the side, or I'm going to make a note here indicating who is the speaker. All right, so since this is the part that tells us, I'm just going to make a quick little arrow down here, and I'll write in the speaker is a person remembering all the adventures he had while reading. Okay, so that's my speaker. The speaker is a person remembering all the adventures he had while reading. A line, for this one, I am going to go ahead and color code this with a brown highlighter. So what is a line in poetry? So for the line in poetry, it is a single line of text, and it doesn't go the same way that a book does, where the sentences just keep going and going, and it is a complete sentence, and you know it has ended because there's a period or a question mark at the end. But poetry goes from left to right, and so every line going from left to right is one line. It does not have to be a complete sentence, and sometimes they don't even have punctuation at the end, and sometimes they do. It is just up to the author how they want to do it. So we're going to underline in brown one single line of text, okay? Just one line. Okay, so like you see, I'm going from left to right, and so that is one line. If we were to count all the lines in this poem, there would be quite a few of them. Actually, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it looks like there's 8 lines up here. Then we have a space, and if we count the bottom section, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 up here, and we have 8 lines down here, and it makes a total of 16 lines. In books, we think in sentences or paragraphs. Groups of sentences are actually called paragraphs, but in poetry, groups of lines are called stanzas. And so that is our third part that we're going to be talking about. And we're going to color code this with a green highlighter. Okay, so our third topic here, or third part of a poem, is going to be a stanza. And a stanza is basically a group of lines, okay? A group of lines separated by a space. And if we go into our poem here, once we open it up, we can already tell, just like we talked a little while ago, we had 8 lines here. And you see this big space right here? So this is going to separate these groups, okay? So we have the first group of here, and this whole group is called one stanza, okay? So I'm going to mark it with the green highlighter. Ooh, it looks like it's very, very light, a very light highlighter here. Okay. So this is my first stanza, and if we come down here, this would be considered my second stanza. And I may have to get another green highlighter because this one seems to be a little bit too light to see. But as long as we know that we have the first group of lines here, and there's always going to be a space that separates these two, and we have another stanza here. So this would be considered my first stanza, and then down here is my second stanza to this poem. The very last thing, or the very last part of a poem that we're going to talk about, is called a rhyme scheme, okay? And we're going to use a purple highlighter for this one. So, okay. Now, with a rhyme scheme, you have probably heard of the word rhyme before, and you may recognize rhyming words, but maybe not so much the word scheme. And all it means is that it is the pattern of rhymes within the poem, okay? So it is just where the rhymes are at and what the pattern is. So if we look into this poem, we can actually find some rhymes at the end of each line. And now usually your rhymes are going to be at the end of the line. They could potentially be in towards the middle of each line, but for the most part, you're going to see them towards the end. So let's look at this, and if we look at the very last word of the lines here, let's see, the first line says face, and we also have 10. But face and 10 don't rhyme together, do they? Because they don't have the same ending sound. So we would have to go to the next line. We have space. Well, face and space rhyme, right? So we're going to go ahead and highlight those two words. Okay. Now if we keep going, we have the word 10, and then we have den. Well, those two do rhyme, don't we? So we're going to go ahead and circle 10. 10 rhymes with den, right? Now if we continue on, this word says troll, and then we have shark. Do troll and shark rhyme? If you said no, you're correct, which means that I have to go on to the next word down here. And this one says hole. Well, troll and hole rhyme. So how about we put a triangle here to indicate that these two rhyme. Okay. Now, we're left with shark. So let's go on to the next line. And the last word we see here is the word snark. Do shark and snark rhyme together? If you said yes, you are correct. So how about we box this one in? Shark and snark. Okay. So the pattern is one that we can actually label it, and we can use letters to do so. So what we will do is say that the first rhyme is going to say A. And let me go ahead and get a different Well, actually, no. Let's go ahead and do it in purple. So face is going to be labeled as A. Okay? Now, we said that 10 doesn't rhyme with face, right? So we can't label it as A. That means that we would have to use a different letter. Well, we'll use the next letter, which is B. Since we said that face rhymes with space, we're going to label it as A. Because, oh, excuse me, A. Because these two rhyme together. Now, since 10 and den rhyme together, we already know 10 is labeled with the letter B, so now we're going to label den with the letter B. 10, den. Okay, now we have troll. Well, troll doesn't rhyme with face, den, space, or den, which means we need to use a different letter now. So we're going to go ahead and use the letter C, a brand new letter for a brand new rhyme. Now, if we go down, we see the word shark. Now, does shark rhyme with any of these? No, right? Because we had it boxed in and none of these are boxed in. So we need a new letter. And we're going to use the letter D. Okay, so if we move down here to the next word, which is hole, and we said hole and troll rhyme. Well, troll has the letter C, so now we're going to place this with the letter C. This brings us down to the very last word, which is snark. Well, snark doesn't rhyme with hole, but snark rhymes with shark, and its designated letter is D. So guess what letter we're going to place right next to it? If you said D, you are correct. So it'll be D. Okay? So it looks like the rhyme pattern here is A, B, A, C, or A, B, A, B, and then C, D, C, D. If we were to continue to go, it would just basically be repeating itself, meaning that every other line is going to rhyme. So this is a really pretty common rhyme scheme that you'll find with lots of poems. Sometimes you may find A, B, A, C, which is just two lines that will rhyme and two lines that don't. But this one is every other line will rhyme. So these are some basic parts, guys, to poems, or they're basic parts to poems that we may see. Next time that you see or read a poem, take a look and see if you can find any of these parts in your poem to better understand it. Since we're talking about poems, I would like to read to you a quick poem called Reading. I chose to share this poem with you because we are all practicing our reading skills during our reading sessions, and this is a poem that brings us back to the steps we use to learn how to read. So I actually have a book here. It's a whole book with a lot of different poems, as you can see. But of course I only chose one, and this one's called Read, 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 Poems by Amy. And let's go ahead and read the poem I wanted to share with you. Okay, so this poem is called Reading. And it says, squiggles make letters, letters make words, words make stories that fly like birds from pages in your book to branches in your brain, where they sing into your soul like soothing summer rain. So I thought this was a really cute poem, and it made sense as to where we're at with our reading skills. And so we've come to the end, and I hope you enjoyed this poem, and after watching this video, I encourage you to read a poem. It may be something out of your comfort zone, but don't be afraid to try something new. Thanks so much for joining me today as we learned about poetry and parts of a poem. See you next time, readers and writers.